All right, let's talk about a word we hear all the time, a number that can really shape how we feel about the economy: unemployment. So you're scrolling through the news and you see a number just like this one. This was the unemployment rate in the US back in July of 2022. It looks so clean, so simple. Well, the truth is, that one little percentage hides a huge, very human story about who has a job, who's looking for one, and who's kind of given up hope. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that story. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First up, we'll see where that number actually comes from. Then we'll dig into what it's not telling us. And finally, we'll look at the two big reasons why there's always some unemployment. So where does that headline number even come from? Well, it all starts with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or the BLS, and the very precise way they categorize every single adult in the country. Okay, so imagine this. The BLS basically sorts every adult into one of three main groups. If you've got a job, you're employed. Easy enough. But, and this is super important, you're only unemployed if you don't have a job and you've actively been looking for one in the last 4 weeks. Everyone else, think students, retirees, stay-at-home parents, they're considered not in the labor force. And this is where we get to a really important idea: the labor force. It's not the entire population. It's just the people who are either working or actively trying to find work. This group is the only thing the unemployment rate is actually measuring. All right, enough with the theory. Let's look at some real numbers from July 2022 and see how this actually works in practice. So the BLS said we had about 158.3 million people with jobs and 5.7 million who were unemployed. So the very first thing we have to do is figure out how big that labor force actually is. Yep, you just add the employed and the unemployed together and boom. That gives us a total labor force of 164 million people.
Okay, now we've got all the pieces. What's the final calculation to get that unemployment rate?
And there you have it. You take those 5.7 million unemployed folks, divide them by the 164 million people in the labor force, and what do you get? 3.5%. We've come full circle, right back to that headline number. So we know how the number's made, but, and this is a big but, that neat little percentage leaves some really important people and their situations completely out of the picture. Let me give you a quick story to show you what I mean. Let's imagine a guy named Josiah. He lost his job, and after a whole year of searching, he just gets discouraged and stops looking. So how does his personal story affect that big national statistic? Here's the crucial change. The moment he stops looking for a job, at least within that 4-week window, the BLS doesn't count him as unemployed anymore. He's now classified as not in the labor force. He basically vanishes from the main statistic. And this is where it gets really weird. Because Josiah is now out of the labor force entirely, the number of unemployed people goes down, and so does the unemployment rate. The headline number actually improves even though someone's situation has arguably gotten worse. Kind of crazy, right? And this story about Josiah really shines a light on the big blind spots of that main number. It completely ignores discouraged workers like him. It also makes no difference between someone working full-time and someone who's just getting a few hours a week. And maybe the biggest one, it can't tell us if people are underemployed. You know, that PhD in chemistry working at a coffee shop just to pay the bills. The rate says they're employed, period. Okay, so now that we know how the number works and where it falls short, let's ask an even bigger question. Why is there always some unemployment? Why can't we get it to zero? Well, the first piece of the puzzle is something called frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment is basically the natural waiting period that happens when people are between jobs. You know, you quit your job to find a better one, or you just graduated and you're looking for that first big gig. It just takes time to find the right fit. And here's the thing, this is actually a good sign. It means our economy is dynamic and people are moving around, finding jobs where they can be more productive and happier. A little bit of this job search unemployment is pretty much inevitable, and honestly, it's necessary.
But, of course, not all unemployment is that simple or short-term. Sometimes the problem runs a lot deeper, and that brings us to our second big category, structural unemployment.
Now this one is a much tougher nut to crack. Structural unemployment happens when there's a fundamental mismatch in the job market. For some reason, the wage for a certain type of job gets stuck above the natural market rate. And when that happens, you get more people who want those jobs than there are actual jobs available.
So, what could possibly push wages up and keep them there? Well, economists usually point to three main culprits that can cause this kind of long-term job shortage.
Okay, take labor unions. They're a classic example. Through collective bargaining, they can negotiate higher wages and better benefits for their members. Now, advocates will tell you this is essential for protecting workers from the power of big companies. On the other hand, critics argue that when unions push wages up, it can cause firms to hire fewer people, leading to unemployment for those who aren't in the union.
And this is a really fascinating one. Sometimes it's the companies themselves that choose to pay more than they have to. It's a theory called efficiency wages. Why would they do that? Well, a firm might pay higher than average wages to attract the absolute best talent, reduce costly turnover, and just motivate their employees to work harder. It can be a really smart business strategy. But the side effect is that it can also contribute to a shortage of jobs in that industry. All right, we've covered a lot of ground. We've seen how the sausage is made, what gets left out, and the two big reasons unemployment is always with us. Let's put it all together now. So what's the big takeaway here? It's this. While most people who become unemployed find a new job pretty quickly, most of the unemployment you see at any given moment is actually made up of people who've been out of work for a long time. This shows us that unemployment isn't just one thing. It's a combination of that short-term, frictional job searching and these much more serious, long-term structural problems. And that leaves us with a really important final question to chew on. If getting to 0% unemployment is not only impossible, but probably not even desirable, what should our goal be? What does a truly healthy and fair job market actually look like? That is the real question.